Hi, I'm Kesenya, and thank you so much for joining me for this video looking at the week ahead in the astro weather. But this week's going to be a little bit different. We're going to be looking at the influence of Mars retrograde and how it's going to affect us for the coming few months. So it's a time when we are looking deep into everything Mars. What does Mars govern? What does Mars rule? How does Mars affect us? And how is Mars going to affect us on the planet for the next few months? What can we expect? So thanks for joining me. So did you see the waxing crescent moon this week? Now I want to point this out. This was fascinating to me. The waxing crescent moon this week, I looked up in the sky and it looked like this. So you can see the bowl shape, the moon's sliver, or fingernail moon as it's sometimes known as, sitting there at the bottom of the moon being revealed. It is considered, it might be an old wives' tale, but it's a tradition that's been handed down for hundreds of years. It's considered that when the moon's waxing crescent is in a bowl shape, that it is going to mean rain. And that because, quite literally, the bowl can hold water. And what have I seen this week in Australia? Rain like nothing else. Certainly where I live, and certainly in parts of the country where my family farm comes from, where has been very, very dry, and they got, I think it was over 2 inches of rain this week. So that has lined up. The old wives' tale has certainly lined up in the skies and on the earth, as above, so below. I'm hoping that this means rain for those of my followers who are in the USA who are struggling with the fires right now. I'm hoping it brings rain and dampens the fires, puts the fires out, and assists in that effort there with that tragedy that's unfolding right now. So hopefully this waxing crescent bowl fingernail moon will bring some assistance and help in the form of rain. Just briefly to touch on that for everybody else to find out what is going on. We have the moon in Pisces on the 2nd of September and the sun in Virgo on the 2nd of September. Just generally, in a quick little mention, because this is coming up in this week's astro weather and it's worth talking about, it's a very significant event to have the moon and its full status in Pisces. This means it's a time for seeing the fruition of things that have been established, the fullness, the culmination point. So you might have established something 2 weeks ago under the new moon in Leo, it was at that time. Something was established 2 weeks ago and it's reaching its fullness now. But more likely, you are going to be seeing the fruition of whatever was established 6 months ago when we had a new moon in Pisces. It takes 6 months for the new moon to progress and become a full moon in Pisces. Because of that, you might be seeing some outplay of whatever was established 6 months ago now reaching its fruition, its fullness, its final stage for you. And I talk in depth about that in my video. But it's also very interesting to note that the sun is conjunct with the fixed star Zosma. That will have a big impact at the same time as the moon is conjunct with the fixed star Scat. Both of these fixed stars will be having an influence on the effects of this particular moon. But in this special astro weather report, we're looking at Mars, everything Mars, all about Mars and Mars retrograde and how it's affecting the collective at the moment. We'll talk a little bit about that, but also more specifically, how is it going to affect me? What is going to happen to me because of this Mars season that I'm currently in? How is that going to impact me and my journey for the rest of 2020? We're going to take a look. So Mars will be retrograding from the 9th of September through to the 13th or 14th of November, depending where you are in the world. We need to be prepared. We need to know what we're in for, and so we can prepare in advance to work as best we can with this particularly difficult energy at this time. Perhaps it might be a good idea if I tell you a little bit about Mars as a planet, because knowing the astronomy of Mars reveals so much about how his energy works in our lives, because it's the old Hermetic principle, as above, so below. What happens in the skies, what happens out there, affects what happens in here, within me, on planet Earth. Mars is the fourth planet from the sun. You've got Mercury, Venus, Earth, and then Mars. And it's the last of the terrestrial planets, the rocky planets, before you hit the big gas giants. And then further out past Neptune, you've got another rocky planet, icy planet, which is Pluto, and then we go on to Eris and all the others out there too. But as far as the inner rocky terrestrial planets, Mars is the last one. Mars is covered in iron oxide, and this gives it its red sheen. Like, you'll notice it in the night sky. It's particularly close at the moment, and it's going to be very close when it's retrograding. It's going to be very strong. It's closer than it's been for, I think, ages, and it's going to be very visible as a very red star in the sky because of this iron oxide that it's covered in. Mars and the Earth are actually very similar. Both have a very similar tilt and rotation, which gives them very similar days and seasons. But it's Mars's nature, its rocky nature, that makes it really unique. Mars has the biggest volcano in the solar system. This is Mount Olympus Mons, and this is massive. It's 21 kilometers high. You could fit 3 Mount Everests on top of one another inside it. It is huge. And doesn't that correlate to how we experience Mars energy on Earth? Mars is often likened to this volcanic rage. If we're feeling angry, if we're feeling passionate, how does it come out of us a lot of the time? Like a volcano. No coincidences that the biggest volcano in the solar system is on Mars. Mars also has the deepest canyon in the solar system. It's 4 kilometers deep. That's 3 times as deep as the Grand Canyon in America. There's a great depth to Mars. There's a lot going on in there. There's a lot of, stuff that goes deep into our core when we are feeling angry, when we're feeling passionate. It's coming from the depths of who we are. No coincidences again. Mars has 2 polar ice caps. Think about it, as above, so below. Sometimes when we get in a fit of rage, we almost can't speak. We become very icy. We become really cool, like, don't even cross this line. And it's that iciness of rage, that white rage that we are in, that's just icy is probably the best term. And there is Mars, this hot little red iron oxide planet with big volcanoes and deep canyons and 2 polar caps of ice. What's really interesting is that water cannot exist on Mars unless it's in frozen solid form, or else because of the thin atmosphere, the water vapors would just evaporate and be blown away by the solar winds. But if it's frozen, it can remain. What will be interesting to note when we're talking a little later about the astronomy of Mars is that Mars has 2 little moons. Now, they're not round moons like what the Earth has. They're just like little asteroids that have been sucked into its gravitational pull. And we're going to talk more about these 2 little moons very soon. But most people know Mars was named after the ancient Roman god of war. Ares was the Greek god of war. So currently Mars is in the sign of Aries, the 2 ancient gods of war, Roman and Greek. Mars was second only to the king of the gods, Jupiter. And in fact, Jupiter and Mars are friends in astrology. Mars, the god, ruled military power. And Mars, the Roman god, was a representation of power and force as a way to ensure peace. Mars, the Roman god, had an element of integrity about who he was. Ares, the Greek god of war, was a little different. We'll talk about the comparison of those 2 in just a minute. Mars was the son of Jupiter and Juno, his wife. Mars fell in love with Venus, and hence we have this friendship between Mars and Jupiter, and we have the alliance, if you like, between Mars and Venus, the feminine Venus and the masculine Mars in sort of any relationship synastry. In the ancient mythology, Mars ruled, and I'm going to read this list, young men, agriculture, aggression, war, but war that delivers peace to people. Keep this in mind. This is very important. War that delivers peace to the people was Mars, the Roman god. Mars, the Roman god, was the defender, the protector, the warrior, the superhero. The feminine archetype, I feel, of Mars is, some would say Diana, but it's much more the feminine archetype of like Wonder Woman, Diana Prince, Wonder Woman superhero energy. For a man, it's probably the Superman, I'm going to get in there, I'm going to save the day, I'm going to rescue people. Mars is the hero energy, the hero's journey. Now, in Iberian mythology, I hope I read this correctly, forgive me, Cariociscus was the god of war, the Mars alternative in Iberian mythology. And actually, people practiced human sacrifice to this god to try and appease him. And they sacrificed animals, horses, goats, and they'd even cut off people's hands to sort of appease this god. So he wasn't quite so nice in Iberian mythology. But in ancient Babylon, the god Negarel, I hope I'm saying that right. I'm not very good at my Babylonian pronunciations. Nergal, sorry. He was aligned to what Mars represented in the Roman and the Greek, and he became their war god. And in time, he also developed into the god of the underworld after his parents El-Nil and Nil-Nil gave him rulership of the underworld. So hence we've got the traditional rulership of Mars over Scorpio and the energy of the underworld there. But obviously in recent times, since 1930, we've discovered Pluto, and Pluto has taken on that role of being the god of the underworld. Indeed, in ancient mythology, he was exactly that in the Greek as well. But this is where Mars gets his rulership of Scorpio and that underworld, deep, intense. Remember those caverns, those canyons on Mars, that deep intenseness of Mars did correlate to the his ancient rulership of the sign of Scorpio. Now the Greek version, and I've already alluded to this, the Greek version of the war god is Aries. But Aries and Mars are different. Aries is the sign, Mars is the planet. And remember, a planet has more oomph, more power. Its energy sort of takes over the energy of a sign. So, for example, if you have Jupiter in Pisces, you're going to probably exhibit more Jupiterian qualities than that will be seen first and foremost before the Pisces qualities are seen, even though they'll both be there. So Mars in Aries, we're going to see more, thankfully, of the Mars typology, which is to be, as I said a moment ago, I'm just going to read it here, the representation of power and force as a way to secure peace. But Aries is a different war god-like energy. Now, I'm going to read to you here. Aries was considered to be needlessly destructive and needlessly violent, where the Roman god Mars practiced power for the purposes of peace. So often in Greek mythological stories, Aries would suffer humiliation and defeat. It's a bit of a joke, quite honestly. He was considered by the Greeks as a dangerous force that was overwhelming and insatiable in battle, destructive, manslaughtering, but not revered by the people. Very different energy to the Mars energy, which was second only to Jupiter. Keep this in mind with what we're coming up to now. Yes, we're getting Aries activation, so that is going to be there, but there is another alternative as well. Mars, ancient god, was reputable and acting for the purposes of peace in that superhero-like way. Mars was the higher, I believe, representation of this war god energy. So that is actually what we want to activate in the coming months, in the coming days, acting for the purposes of peace. Hopefully not war for the purposes of peace. Hopefully, we can work on democracy for the purposes of peace. I'll talk about that soon. But this is where these archetypes are stemming from in mythology. Now, as for Mars's two little moons, they were discovered in 1877, and they were given the name, quite interestingly, of some ancient Greek gods. The twins, Phobos, who represented panic and fear, and Demios, who represented terror and dread. And these two twins in Greek mythology would always accompany their father Ares into battle in the Greek mythology. So what does this tell us? Well, when Mars is activated, you're getting the energy of these two little twin moons that he's got zooming around him as well, which can bring out panic, which can bring out fear and terror and dread, as I said. What about in astrology? What is Mars in astrology? Well, most people think they know Mars in astrology. Hopefully this insight into the actual physicality of Mars, the astronomy of Mars, and the mythology of Mars has helped clear up where these things are coming from and what the true nature of Mars actually really is. In astrology, Mars tells us about our courage and our energy. And wherever Mars sits in our chart, and check it out on astro.com if you need to find out where Mars sits, wherever Mars sits, that tells us so much about how we can get ourselves out of a stuck situation, how we can activate things and change things and put some energy into things and put some courage and willpower and, sort of exude our hero's journey to create change. In fact, wherever Mars sits in our chart represents what we're going to have our hero's journey with. If you're familiar with the idea, Joseph Campbell's idea of the hero's journey, which is all about how can I overcome and, go into the underworld, so to speak, and overcome and defeat something and rise out the other side as victorious, in a nutshell. Not only that, but Mars tells us where we can get fired up over something, where we can get passionate about something, where we can get in a tiz about something. We might be passionate about fixing world problems if we have Mars in the 11th house. We might be passionate about taking care of children if Mars is in the 4th house. We might be passionate about creating a career for ourselves if Mars is in the 6th house or the 10th house. And this is why wherever Mars sits in your chart tells you how you can get out of a rut, how you can motivate yourself, how you can change and take action to give you more momentum in life. Mars also tells us about what we're going to get angry over. I have Mars in the 6th house. What gets me angry is exploitation of people, abuse of people. I also get angry about injustice and anything where it's out of balance, where there is an unfair distribution of wealth or privilege or, that really riles me up. And certainly that's my Mars being enacted in the 6th house. Wherever your Mars is will tell you where you feel angry. It also can tell you about what you might fall in love with, because Mars is passion and desire. So, Mars in the 6th house might mean you're a bit of a workaholic. You love your work. You're passionate about your work. Mars in, the 11th house might mean you just love your friends. You love your networks. Having big networks and connections and socializing, that's what you love and you're passionate about it. Wherever Mars sits tells you a lot about what you will be passionate about and what you'll fall in love with. Not who you'll fall in love with, but what you will be in love with. Mars teaches us to love the superhero in ourselves. If we have a weak Mars, then we need to activate that. And I'll talk about some remedies for a weak Mars soon. If we have a weak Mars, we need to amp it up. But if we have a strong Mars, then Mars represents our superhero nature. And we should be able to respect and honor the superhero nature in others as well. In what way are they being courageous? In what way are other people being heroes? We need to hold that up and honor that because they're really using their Mars for good. In what way are you being courageous in life? If you were a superhero, what are you going to be most known for? Where is your superhero qualities going to be exhibited? You might look at the aspects being made to Mars. For example, I'll give you an example from my chart. My Mars aspects the moon. And because of that, I feel that I have to be the superhero, the Wonder Woman, and exhibit my superhero nature in raising my children as a single mum. Mars in aspect to the moon is causing that. That's where I feel like I'm a bit of a superhero. Where are you a superhero? In what house of the chart? In what aspects to other planets? What way are you being a superhero in your own life? Honor that, love that, embrace that side of yourself. Now, a bit more about astrology. Mars is the first planet that creates squares and oppositions to the sun. Before Mars, none of the planets do that. It's the first planet that can actually circle the sun in astrology. And I'll grab my pen and I'll show you what I mean. Here we have Mercury and Venus. Mercury and Venus are never more than 2 signs away from the sun. So you'll only get them, here's the sun here, and they'll only be in this proximity. Mars is the very first planet in the solar system that we come across that will do a whole circuit away from the sun because it sits beyond the Earth. And remember, astrology is how the universe works from our vantage point on Earth. It is Earth-centered, not sun-centered, because if you're sun-centered, then all the planets circle you, and the perspective is different. But we are looking from how energy behaves from our perspective on Earth. Because of our perspective on Earth, we only ever see Venus and Mercury in this zone around the sun, but Mars is the first one to do the full ring around. And that's quite important to note. Mars is the bridge between the personal planets, Venus, Mercury, Sun, and Moon, which are all within proximity of the Earth, as I've just described here. The Moon does go around because the Moon obviously goes around the Earth, not around the Sun, so we see it doing a full circuit. But Mars is the bridge between the personal planets that reflect our personality and our identity, and Jupiter and Saturn, which represent society. The personal planets, they actually represent our inner self, our inner motivations, our identity, our thoughts, our feelings, what we think about. But Mars is when we take things out beyond the inner into action. How do we make it happen? How do we make it real? Yeah, oh, Venus, I'm in love with this person. I feel, they're beautiful. I love them. Love, love, love. And Mars says, righto, how are we going to make this real? How are we going to act this? How are we going to cause some change that manifests in physical reality? Let's take action. Mars takes our feelings beyond the inner, and our thoughts, Mercury thoughts, Venus feelings, Moon feelings, beyond the inner into the outer world, into the action center. Jupiter and Saturn they're the interpersonal planets, and they're very much about how society actually functions. So Mars is sitting in between this. How do I take my inner self out into the world, and then how does it affect society, which is what comes next? It's very much the in-between planet, Mars. He's a fascinating little guy. Not so little either. Mars asks us, okay, who am I individually and how do I interact with society? How does that work? That's what Mars is all about. That's what Mars is asking us. Mars is the planet of our personal assertion, whereas Pluto is the planet, generally speaking, unless we're doing a deep karmic reading, but Pluto generally correlates to collective assertion, which is why we're seeing so much animosity on the Earth right now. It's coming from Pluto's collective rage, collective anger, collective assertion. Mars is the individual. It's me. What am I angry about? What am I passionate about? Mars is individual power versus Pluto, collective power. So this is why now we're seeing a lot of people getting very tense individually. Like, how are my rights being thwarted? How are my needs not being met? Me as an individual, me. Mars is a bit like that. But currently, during this season, we are having a square aspect, and this is what's making things so difficult for the end of 2020. We are having a square aspect running from Mars to Pluto, Jupiter, and Saturn. I'll try and get that to sit straight. There we are. Pluto, Jupiter, and Saturn. And a square aspect means like you're in the rugby scrum. There's push, trying to get through the wall and make something happen and bring about some change, but change with, friction involved. That's a square aspect. That's what a square aspect does. Now, some astrologers believe that Mars and Jupiter combined represents democracy, the action we take for societal change. Now, when you've got a square aspect going on, obviously the energy of democracy is going to be fractious and full of friction. We want to take confrontation now to challenge the dogma of Jupiter, because in its shadow side, and remember, Jupiter is not strong in Capricorn. Jupiter is in debilitation in the sign of Capricorn. Then we see kind of not the negative, I hate to use that word. The shadow side of Jupiter is exhibiting more, which can be dogmatic and can be a little bit self-righteous, quite honestly. And so we're seeing this playing out now between the individual personal needs, assertion of individual power versus the dogma of the collective, of society, Jupiter in Capricorn. People are wanting to confront the dogma. They're wanting to challenge the dogma right now. So under this energy, it's going to be very hard to create democratic decisions, obviously, because the democracy that we usually rely on is not running at its best peak. In fact, it's quite the opposite. It's really under the greatest tension ever. But which planet is stronger? Mars. The individual people are stronger. So it's going to be fractious, but the individual is more powerful in this sense. It is in its own sign, Mars in Aries, and Jupiter is not as amped up. It's struggling in the sign of Capricorn. Now, unfortunately as well, we've got a square to Saturn at the sort of the latter degrees going on for the rest of this year in Capricorn also. Saturn wants to enforce rules. And with Jupiter there too, Saturn wants to enforce democratic rules and regulations that help society function. But I've got to say, Mars in a square to Saturn is not going to enable that democratic function to work as we would ordinarily hope it to. It will be difficult to enforce democratic solutions until the end of this year. And what are we seeing? Certainly in the state where I live in Australia, we're seeing draconian Orwellian type activity going on to the extreme because democratic processes are not functioning at their best under this energy. Now, when the democratic process cannot function properly, what happens is we see the shadow energy of Mars starting to exhibit, starting to come out. What is the shadow energy of Mars? It's that volcano, Mount Olympus Mons, on Mars itself. Explosion bigger than anything we could possibly imagine. Thankfully, it hasn't. Olympus Mons hasn't exploded for probably billions of years, but it is still there. And Mars energy is like the volcano. So how is this playing out for us individually? Well, it's the time to be expressing our individual opinions. Don't be afraid to say what you need to say on Facebook. This needs to happen because we want to encourage democratic change, yes. But democratic change only comes when the people voice their concerns, voice their opinions. If you just button up, then the volcano gets squashed down, like the lava is kept down, a lid on the lava. And what happens? Out it comes. So say what you need to say now. Be respectful, be democratic, be balanced in your views where possible. Allow space for the opinions of other people. That can be hard to do under this energy, believe me. But it needs to happen because people need to say what is going on, what they're feeling, how they are feeling right now. Because it's the expression of the individual needs and the individual concerns that is going to bring about the necessary change. In fact, this couple of months that we're looking at here is going to be the most important time this year for ushering in new change. Now, some people say ushering in a new world order. Well, maybe, but, what do we actually want? What are our needs? And how can we make it happen? It's not going to happen, though, without a bit of a rugby scrum is the best way I can describe this square aspect, this push, this shove, this intensity, like feeling like you're banging your head up against a brick wall. And certainly so many of my friends feel that way with what they believe in and what they're standing for. Especially as the passion of Aries is up against the conservatism of Capricorn right now. And it is really challenging. It's the rugby scrum of having to push through the obstacles. But I want to say that pushing through now with as much force as we can manage in order to maintain peace is really the way forward. That higher quality level of Mars, the god in Roman mythology, not the Greek Aries, that's where we want to go. In fact, this is needed if we're to avoid the shadow side of Mars, that explosive anger energy coming out, the god of war. Right, okay, we're going to get peace, and we're going to get peace at any cost, we want to try and channel the democracy and push through the obstacles right now if we are to indeed know peace without it turning into the Roman god of war, peace that comes through having to go to war, and Aries, who's just a total embarrassment. So we're going to be talking about this energy in all the astro weather reports for the next couple of months and how it affects us personally. So you'll probably hear me referring to, Mars square Jupiter or Mars square Pluto, Mars square Saturn. These are all playing out for the next couple of months up till the end of the year. So don't think this is the end of it. I just want to give you the full overview. But what we're really going to experience from September 9 till November 14 is Mars going retrograde. Now, I want to ask you, did you notice an intense shift of energy in the collective or in you personally around the 26th of July? So 26th of July in Australia, 25th of July in the rest of the world, other parts of the world. I did. I was almost tangible. I became all restless and agitated. I became really amped up, sort of cranky, and I couldn't explain it. I'm like, what is going on here? I became frustrated with anything that wasn't helping me to grow or evolve. And I started noticing from that point on, all around me, I started noticing people being more agitated. People became cranky and sort of complaining and frustrated and perceivably more aggressive. Governments sought to control more. Certainly the government in Australia did after that time. People began passionately speaking up. People began to sort of be more fighty, as my little kids, when the kids were little, used to say, I'm fighty. People became more that way. And why? Because Mars entered shadow period at that time. Something that I noticed as well was a massive drop in views of my YouTube. And I was like, why is this happening? And then for weeks, I couldn't figure out what's going on, what's causing this. And very interesting, I'll just give you a sort of an overview of how this was affecting my personal chart. When Mars entered retrograde season, he's aspecting my Libra moon, and Libra is conjunct Uranus, the internet. And the moon is our home, domestic environment, obviously. But there's also this square to Pluto, Uranus, Mars in my chart personally right now. So anything to do with internet is compromised, and I've been having the biggest internet troubles you could possibly imagine under this. It's been driving me bonkers. So accidents, mistakes, these sorts of things with Aries, Mars aspecting Uranus by a square since entering this shadow period. Plus Mars in my natal chart, as I've already said in this intro, sits in my 6th house of work and everyday routine. So it's my work internet that is really suffering. And so my views have dropped of my videos by 2/3 on my channel. And it's had me scratching my head going, what am I doing wrong? Why don't people like me? And it's been really disconcerting. But this is another indicator of Mars moving and doing some, causing some upheaval and accidents through oppositions and squares in this energy at this time. Little things like that we think enough, we don't sort of correlate them to stuff. We look at the big outer world events and world leaders and crankiness and rules and regulations of draconian governments and what have you. But really in our own little lives as well, our own personal lives, we see the effects of these planets constantly if we know how to look for them. So what is Mars shadow period for people who don't know, who are new to astrology? Let me explain. Every 2 years, Mars, to our vantage point on Earth, looks like he's going backwards in the sky. This year, from the time Mars was at 15 degrees, I'll write that on there, hopefully everyone can see, 15 degrees of Aries, when Mars moved across that 15 degree point, he entered shadow period. And he's going to be traveling forwards up until September the 9th, and he will reach 28 degrees of Aries. And when he hits 28 degrees, he's slowing down as he's heading towards this period. He will stop and he will sit there. He will station. And then for the period of September 9th or 10th, depending where you are in the world, he's going to, up until November 13th, 14th, he is going to be, to our eyes on Earth, moving backwards. And he's going to move back to 15 degrees. And that is the shadow period, because currently Mars is moving across the zone that he's going to retrograde through between September 9 to November 14. So back to here. And on November 14, he will hit 15 degrees of Aries again. And then he turns direct. And oh, thank God. Hopefully we'll be out of the woods as he then begins to move forward, and will continue to move forward for the next 2 years. So this is what we're seeing. Mars is a very challenging energy to experience this retrograde motion of. And what does it mean to have retrograde? Well, I've just seen on my notes, I should point out, Mars is going to actually leave Aries and move completely out of this retrograde zone on the 8th of January 2021. But what does Mars retrograde mean in the natal chart? Well, it can mean difficulty for the person. If you've got Mars retrograde, you'll have Mars with a little R beside it in your chart. And that means difficulty expressing anger or aggression and hostility. We bottle it up inside. And then that's when it comes out like a volcano. Instead of asserting ourselves naturally as we're going through the emotions, going through the feelings, we will keep it within. It's anger that's expressed usually inappropriately, and it can come out as very passive aggressive in a natal chart where Mars is retrograde. Of course, I would suggest as well checking your progress chart, because it's entirely possible if you're born with Mars retrograde at some point that your progress Mars has changed and gone direct, which means you're no longer under that energy of repressed anger. But Mars retrograde in the natal chart, if it hasn't changed direction in the progress chart, can indicate difficulties in competitive situations in life. We probably prefer solitary activities. We prefer, things like, well, we might actually prefer motivating other people, like being a coach of a sports team rather than participating in the actual competition. We're like, come on, you can do it. And, try this and do this and use this strategy. Mars is a strategist. So we might actually do better in those kinds of situations. But I want to point out that with internalized anger, we know that can lead to depression. We know that can lead to accidents. And this is really important to realize as we come to this time of Mars retrograde for the collective, because the incidences of depression might be higher due to repressed anger that we're feeling or frustration that we're feeling. The incidences of accidents, just like I was describing before, continual accidents and frustrations, Mars's frustration with my internet, the accidents, the frustrations that keep occurring during Mars retrograde season can be a result also of internalized anger in people and frustration in people. We're going to talk about remedies and solutions soon. I've just thought of the way to get rid of my internet problems. But all these things common to the individual are now going to also be experienced in the collective. Collective depression, collective frustration, collective accidents, collective difficulties in any situation where there's competitiveness going on. It's going to be hard. What is this going to mean then for us all? Well, it's not a time to initiate something. During this zone, September 9 to November 14, do not initiate anything to do with stuff ruled by Mars. And what's that? Well, anything like competitions, battles, conflicts, anything involving tools. Mars rules tools, Mars rules construction, real estate, anything that you're passionate about. Sorry about that, guys. Anything entrepreneurial, any entrepreneurial endeavors. Just steer clear of them for a couple of months for the duration of this time, because anything that you initiate, like if you start a new entrepreneurial endeavor, if you start a new passionate relationship, if you start some sort of, you put your house on the market thinking it's going to sell, doing some real estate activities, you're going to be disappointed. You're going to be frustrated. It'll fail. Take people to court. It's not going to go your way. If you initiate a court action during this retrograde season, you're going to come off second best. It's not going to go in your favor, because Mars retrograde means the opposite of what we want in terms of these things ruled by Mars. Don't initiate anything to do with whatever Mars rules in your chart. And we'll be talking about this when we go around all the signs. Don't initiate anything to do with what Mars rules in your chart, or where Mars sits in your chart. For example, my chart, Mars is in the 6th house. I'm not going to initiate any new work projects when Mars is going retrograde. Why? It's just going to fail. It's not going to get up. Why waste my time? I will sit and twiddle my thumbs waiting for Mars to move out of retrograde period. Anything that we initiate in this lead up now, since Mars has moved into the shadow period, it's going to move more slow. So since the 26th of July, we're going to notice that anything we initiate during this time, any new project, any new relationship, any new friendship, any new whatever, it's going to move more slowly, especially during Mars retrograde. And we might be banging our head against the wall. Why is this not working? How come this isn't happening the way I envisioned that it would, or I dreamed it would, or I thought it would? Blockages. And this is coming because of Saturn's square. Blockages and restrictions that cause us frustration, anger, delays. We can get very aggressive over how slow things are taking, the lack of momentum things have, the blockages, Saturn. But at the same time, we've got Jupiter and Pluto wanting to push forward, wanting to say, let's go, let's do, come on, bring it. I'm like, Pluto is just in there wanting the power, and Jupiter is amplifying that, and nothing's happening. It is a time of stalling, spinning our wheels, feeling frustrated that we're not progressing, not moving ahead. This is really annoying. So remember that this is what's happening. Remember that during this time, this is going to be the energy. Exercise patience as much as you can. Prepare to not launch anything new during this retrograde season. Practice endurance. Practice your thumb twiddling while you wait for this energy to pass, rather than getting frustrated and annoyed because there's no momentum, nothing's happening. Who's going to be most impacted by all of this? Well, anyone with personal planets, I've kind of given you an illustration of what's going on in my chart. Anyone with personal planets between 15 degrees of Aries and 28 degrees of Aries, but also 15 degrees and 28 degrees of Libra, and 15 degrees and 28 degrees of Cancer, and obviously Capricorn as well. How do I draw that on there without drawing on my planets? 15 degrees and 28 degrees of these 4 signs that sit opposite and square to Aries. These are the people who are going to notice this the most. These are what we call the cardinal signs. Keep in mind, as I said, things are going to move slowly with Mars and Saturn blocking things, but it's a building phase, it's a construction phase, because in a natal chart, Mars and Saturn are both connected to building and construction. And when they operate well together, which they're not really at the moment, when they do operate well together, they build things. You get beautiful houses and architecture and what have you. But this time that we're entering into now, if we keep remembering, okay, this is a building phase, I'm not going to get results. It's about pushing through in the rugby scrum, getting through the obstacles and building for the future. Keep that in mind and you will cope so much better with this. The blessings will come in 2021 of what you build right now. It's a birthing phase. It's like we're in the labor pains of delivering a baby, and we're going to feel this collectively and we're going to feel it personally. You know, we are going through this really intense period. So what are some remedies for this intense period? Well, Mars rules exercise. So it is a good thing to exercise. If you're feeling frustrated, go for a jog. It mightn't take the frustration away, but it will burn up some of that amplified energy that you're going to be feeling. The frustrated circumstance might still be there, but your energy might sort of be a bit released, hopefully. Ordinarily, Mars remedies might be to go and have some sex to let off steam. I wouldn't do it under this influence. It's blocked by Saturn. Hello? You'll go to try and make love or whatever and get your rumpy-pumpy on, and then Saturn's like nothing happens. No orgasm, no sort of climaxing, no, big squash on the being able to enjoy it. That could be a thing for some people as well. And if it is, don't panic. Don't run out there and get the Viagra or whatever. It's just the energy of the moment, okay? It'll pass. Mars remedies, when we don't have enough willpower, wearing red, Mars color, wearing red is helpful to lift our energy, to lift our willpower and assertion. Wearing red colored gemstones as well. That's my little Regulus amulet from Krasi. She's amazing. Wearing red gems, eating red foods, red-based stuff, is great for amplifying, according to the Vedic tradition, our Mars willpower and our Mars energy. But under this time, when we go through this retrograde period, it would be advisable, if your energy and assertion is in overdrive, to tone things down. So what are the remedies? Well, we look to moon energy, actually. Moon remedies: eating more leafy greens, eating moist vegetables, drinking more water. We might start to it might be better, instead of wearing red, to wear pink, white or silvery colors, moon colors. Wearing pearls instead of red gems. Wearing silver jewelry. Moon energy is silver jewelry. And the moon is also connected to hypnosis, psychology, and psychotherapy. So it's actually, if you're feeling overwhelmed with Mars energy, it's a good time to look into doing some of those things. And if you're interested, for those of you who are, I have some wonderful healers working with me on my website. Shamanic practitioner, shamanic healing practitioner, past life regressionist and hypnosis specialist, and some other really great practitioners as well. But really, when we're talking moon energy, they're the two ones that will be helping to assist in alleviating and helping you find peace during this amplified, antsy, antagonistic energy of Mars in its shadow and retrograde phases. So you can head on over to my website if you would like to check that out, www.guidingstarAstrology.com. So now that we've come through that big introduction, that big information session on Mars and how it will affect you and the collective during this time, let's take a peek at personally what area of the chart it is playing out. I want to just remind you also, we're going to be looking at the Mars amplification energy and where it's playing out in your chart where Aries resides, the sign of Aries, which is where obviously Mars is currently moving through. But you might like to also consider looking at where your natal Mars sits in your chart and listening to that sign as well, because that will actually give you a bit of a representation of what you can expect also. Okay? So let's start with Aries, because in this season, we don't want to keep Aries waiting too long. For Aries rising people, Mars is obviously falling in your first house. So your confidence is going to be one of the big directives here. You might not feel as confident as you usually are. This is the house of your vitality as well, and how you show up in the world. You might be feeling very lackluster with Mars going backwards in the sky in your first house of vitality. You might be feeling lackluster. You might be feeling tired. You might be feeling just like you don't have enough energy for life. Well, twiddle your thumbs, allow that to be the case for the duration of this process, and just say this is just the energy of the time. If I need to sleep, I'll sleep. If I need to just take it easy, I'll take it easy. Go with the flow, go with the energy rather than fighting against it and causing trouble. Also, don't initiate anything to do with first house things. First house things are connected to anything we start up, really. It's not a time for you to be starting up anything at all. So don't start up new romances, don't start up a new business, don't start a new advertising project, don't start anything entrepreneurial, don't start anything that has to do with your body and your life's journey. Don't start a new exercise program. Don't go get a new haircut. Don't do anything that pertains to your body and your body's image and your sense of identity in the world. Steer clear of that, because under this energy, it's just going to end in frustration and disappointment. You would be far better off waiting until this time is over and then making your move. Taurus people, Mars will be retrograding in your 12th house. For Taurus rising people, this means that your vitality may also be impacted as well, because this is the house of sleep and rest. And of course, if Mars is retrograding, then any vitality that we have is sort of going within, and we just feel like we need more sleep, more rest. So do be aware that that can be the case. Your spirituality and your intuition can be a little bit off under this time, under this transit also. So do be aware of that as well. This is also the house of the past lives. And there might be, if there's any anger, any fears, any aggression that is within you, maybe deep down in your psyche from past lives, or maybe in this life, it's going to be brought to the surface now, and you probably will have to examine it. You also want to watch out for being deceived by other people under this energy too, being hoodwinked, have the wool pulled over your eyes, which is a more negative side of the 12th house. You could really be confused or led astray as well. Now, in this area of the chart, Mars is in, anything that we try to initiate with Mars during this retrograde cycle is not going to get up. So if you've got a creative project that you want to initiate, if you're trying to start some sort of spiritual practice or spiritual endeavor, it's going to frustrate you. It's going to annoy you rather than bless you. You'd be better to wait a couple of months before you start your creative project, before you work on that spiritual new endeavor that you've got a real bee in your bonnet about. wait, because it's just going to end up, maybe causing an accident. If you, try a yoga move that is a bit beyond what your capabilities are, that could cause an accident, or you might get frustrated by the inability to make that creative project gel, and it could just be all backfire on you. So do be careful under that energy. Plus, if you're trying to initiate anything really that is of that spiritual creative nature, but also a holiday as well, or a chance to escape, or a chance to tap out of society, it's going to be frustrated under this energy too. So be very, very careful of that. If you had booked a holiday prior to Mars retrograde, then it might get postponed for some reason. You might have to wait before you can take it, but you'll eventually be able to take it. If you book a holiday during Mars retrograde, then it's just going to get cancelled and you're not going to get your money back. So be careful when you're booking holidays or retreats or any type of escapism. If you're planning a visit to hospital, please be careful, because it's not a good energy to be going to a hospital or a prison particularly for surgery. For Taurus rising people, it's not a good idea to have surgery now under these conditions during Mars retrograde, with Mars retrograding in the 12th house. Better to wait. Okay, Gemini rising people. Aries rules the 11th house of friendships and associations and networks, goals, dreams, humanitarian, charitable causes and things like that. And here is where things might suffer. Your friendships might suffer. There might be sort of a blow up with some friends and some arguments with a friend. There might be some frustrations with a friend, or you might have to bite your tongue about something that a friend is saying or doing, and it can be very, very irritating. Your enthusiasm for networking, making new friends, connecting might be way, way, way lower than it usually is. There's just no energy there any longer for those sorts of things when Mars is retrograding in this house. Of course, this is the house of your goals and dreams as well. And we're talking frustrated energy, frustrated about the dreams and goals that you're trying to, bring about, not manifesting, not coming together, not working for you right now. So if you're looking to initiate things in some sort of area of your goals and dreams and aspirations, you're going to be disappointed. You're going to be frustrated. It's better not to. It's better not to initiate new friendships. It's better not to join a new club or group. It's better not to sort of get involved in any humanitarian or activist, causes under this energy. Initiate getting involved. If you get involved now before the retrograde starts, you'll be fine. You might be frustrated a little bit, but you'll be fine. But if you get involved during retrograde, it's just going to turn out to be a complete disaster for you, and you'll wish you'd never done it. So be very careful about initiating anything to do with 11th house matters. Some new goal, dream, friendship, all these things I've described. Getting involved in any type of system, perhaps getting involved in the internet, setting up a website, something like that. During Mars retrograde in your 11th house, no. It'll flop, it'll annoy you, it will be the most frustrating experience of your life. Don't go setting up anything on the internet or setting up any type of new system in your life under Mars retrograding in the 11th house for Gemini rising people. For Cancer rising people, well, Mars energy is falling in the 10th house. And for Cancer rising people, because you are a cardinal sign, if you have planets or your rising degree between 15 to 28 degrees of Cancer, you're going to feel this. You're going to note this energy very, very strongly. Particularly, you're going to note it in your professional life. This is where you'll feel it. Your ambition, your public relations, your reputation. These are things ruled by the 10th house. There could be some hiccups, some stalling, some, twigs in the stream that sort of stop you getting where the flow wants to take you. And that can be very irritating. I want to encourage you to persevere. Push through this energy, because we're in the rugby scrum. I keep using that illustration. We're in the rugby scrum and we're trying to build something new. We're trying to birth something new. So keep persevering. Just tell yourself, you know what? I'm just going to keep one foot in front of the other and keep going regardless of the outcome, regardless of the results, as I build for something new. But by all means, do not initiate anything new with regard to your desire for a promotion or some work project or starting a new career or chasing some worldly dream or ambition. Don't start anything new regarding those things. Under this retrograde energy from September the 9th to November the 14th, you will fall down, you'll be frustrated, it will be annoying and disappointing, and you'll just think, why did I bother? Why did I put my energy there when it just came to nothing? So do be very, very conscious of that with regard to your career. If you are Leo rising people, this energy is falling in your ninth house. And this is the realm that you want to be very careful about where you're initiating things. You know, during not Mercury retrograde, Mars retrograde, we are encouraged not to initiate anything new in the realm ruled by Mars. And this is Aries, your ninth house. So don't go looking to start a new university course. Don't go looking to find a new guru, or perhaps organize a holiday, or go and enjoy some sort of cultural activity in another cultural place, because you're going to be frustrated by doing this. There will be annoyances, there will be irritations there, and hiccups and stalling and disappointments. It's going to be a frustrating time for anything that you initiate of a ninth house nature. If you're wanting to explore a new belief system, if you're wanting to have an adventure, if you're wanting to expand your horizons in any way, it's going to be thwarted and stalled. And you'll be like, annoying. It's also a time when you might question some of your beliefs, and you might question some of your inspirational mentors as well. Do they really know what they're talking about? Are they really worth my, devotion here? You might be questioning, belief systems, and that's always a good thing. In that sense, this Mars retrograde might bring some positivity. It is worth us questioning our belief systems. Are they solid? And is the ground that they sit on really true? Is there truth at the bottom of this? So you might be, exploring that sort of thing. You can also have a lot less energy and a lot less drive for exploring belief systems, or intermingling with other cultural situations, or I'm not interested in connecting with my guru. Oh, that email that came through from that inspirational figure, don't care. Just not interested, lackluster, no energy for that kind of thing at the moment. If you happen to be Virgo rising, well, this is putting the energy of Mars retrograde in the 8th house, one of the malefic houses. Not an easy placement to have, but keep in mind that when we have a malefic planet in a malefic house, it nullifies the effects. So for Virgo people, they might do better out of this than some others might, because of the mitigation of that malefic energy according to the Vedic system. But we're still having Mars retrograde. There can be a lot of anger issues here. This is a house, 8th house is a house of passion and deep, intense emotions. It's going to be amplified. It's just going to be on overdrive right now. So, be careful to exhume is the word I was going to use. Get rid of that over the top Mars energy in healthy ways, and avoid sort of the detrimental to sort of buoy you up and get you through. You might be frustrated with power dynamics now, especially in intimate relationships and sexual relationships. In fact, your sexual life may suffer quite strongly under this. Mars retrograde means no sex, no sex drive. It's just way down, like someone's thrown a cold bucket of water on you. Well, it's just a thumb twiddling time. Wait your turn till after November the 14th, and then things might redirection, hopefully. I do want to point out too, though, that fears and phobias can be amplified now under Mars retrograding through the 8th house. Anything that we've got paranoia about comes to the fore when Mars is retrograding here. There might be difficulties and delays and blockages and frustrations with an inheritance, or some insurance payout, or some sort of, receipt of money that has been coming to you, and suddenly it dries up and you don't have that receipt of money anymore. So it's unearned money is basically 8th house stuff, and that can be very, very frustrating for you. You can also see an old lover return, but not for good. Usually under this energy and this impact that we've got, particularly with the square to Jupiter, Pluto and Saturn, it might be a very karmic lover coming back, that for something that needs to be resolved and healed and unraveled in some way. And of course that can be somewhat challenging. So do be careful if you find an old lover coming back, crossing your path in some way. For Libra rising people, well, this is all happening in your 7th house. Don't go initiating any new love affairs. Don't propose to your girlfriend or your boyfriend under this energy, because you'll be disappointed. So when Mars is retrograding in your 7th house, we don't go doing that. But we may find that an old lover or an old intimate relationship comes back into our life, wanting to be readdressed and sorted out. Not a karmic one, but an old one from this lifetime is what we're looking at. And so they might be obsessing over you. They might be stalking you. They might be, during this retrograde season, they might be really giving you the willies, is a term we would use in Australia. So be very, very careful about that. Equally, I might point out, you might be becoming obsessive about an old lover. You might be thinking about them all the time and, trying to contact them and trying to reach them and obsess. So just watch yourself there, Perhaps direct your energy into journaling about the old lover. There's nothing wrong with feeling that way, but journaling about the old lover rather than driving them up the wall. I would also suggest, if you're a Libra rising or sun or moon, but mostly rising person, it's going to be very difficult for you if you have personal planets in this degree, 15 to 28 degrees of Libra, or your rising degree between 15 to 28 degrees of Libra. That's going to be difficult for you. You'll notice it more profoundly. I've got my moon there, can't wait. And also because of that, and because this is happening in your 7th house of contractual arrangements and business partnerships, don't go hiring a new advertiser. Don't go organizing, some sort of contractual agreement. Maybe, you're going to advertise something, or maybe you're going to get an accountant to do some tax work for you or something. Don't go initiating a new business partnership under this retrograde season, because it will be frustrating. It will be annoying. It will not work in your favor. Put things off. It's really annoying because we're coming up to, it's tax season. Like I should have got my tax return in by now. I don't have an accountant. Oh my God, I should have been more organized, and can't see myself getting it all together before the 9th of September unless I pull my finger out. So lucky me. But this is not the time for establishing new business partnerships and new business relationships. It's not the time for any contracts, contractual agreements. It's not the time for, trying to negotiate win-win situations or developing good court case outcomes. It's a time for laying low and waiting and biding our time, which can be very frustrating because we want to push ahead. We want to move on. Just know that this energy is not in favor of us doing so. We're going to have to sit and we're going to have to wait it out. Not an easy thing for Mars to do. But Libra, your energy might be a little more patient. Scorpio rising. Well, this is all falling in your 6th house. This is where you need to hold back on initiation. Don't initiate a new work project. Don't start a new job. You might find it completely frustrating or disappointing. Yeah, you might be able to get a new job, but you might go there, start on the first day and think, oh, what have I done? I should have stayed with my old job. This sucks. I hate this. You'll be disappointed. You'll be frustrated if you change jobs during Mars retrograde. Okay, we've got to pay the bills. I get that. And sometimes we've just got to suck it up, don't we? But it can be very irritating under Mars retrograde energy with regard to work, with regard to, new health routines, new diet, new exercise, getting a new pet. These are all things that if we initiate anything in these areas, a new diet, a new exercise routine, buy a new pet, whatever, it's going to end up being very annoying and very difficult. Maybe we buy that beautiful little pet that we've been wanting for ages, and then we find out it's got a genetic, whoops. There'll be some comments about that in the comment section. Genetic deformity that costs us a fortune at the vet. And we're like, oh, why? Why have we got this pet? And look at the problems we've got now. Disappointment, frustration. The energy of Aries here in the 6th house, pets, like I said, and dealing with people who are in more difficult situations than us can just cause us frustration. If we're trying to help somebody with a problem, we might actually be beating our head up against a brick wall with it and go, why do I even try? Why do I even help? I shouldn't bother. You're right, you shouldn't bother. During Mars retrograde in your 6th house, if you're trying to help fix a problem for someone, it's just going to be really irritating. So maybe it's better not to, or to sort of make it sort of say, oh, I'll do it later. Maybe after November 14th, they'll come around and help you sort out those dodgy back steps that you've got, But if you do it during Mars retrograde, try to fix a problem, it can be just a nightmare for you. So do be careful. If you're in court, that's going to be hard. If you decide to initiate a court case, that this is more the point. If you try to initiate something new during Mars retrograde that has to do with sixth house things, it's going to be frustrating. So if you try and take someone to court, if you try and start a conflict with someone, if you try and start like a war with someone, it doesn't matter who they are, it can be very frustrating and actually not in your best interests. You'll lose at court. You will suffer the consequences. Just don't initiate anything of a confronting nature. Don't sort of interact with enemies in any way. Don't, like I said, start a new exercise regime. You probably, do your weightlifting and you pull a muscle and, end up in hospital or something like that. Just bide your time during Mars retrograde season. That would be my word to the wise. Mars is also our energy and vigor, and with a retrograde motion, we might be feeling a bit lackluster. Like we've got no enthusiasm for our exercise routine. We've got no enthusiasm now for our daily work. We're just like, oh, yawn, I'm so over it. That can also manifest too. And our enthusiasm for the everyday, ordinary things of life suddenly disappears. If you're feeling that way and it's leaving you feeling depressed, know that it's just a passing phase of energy and it's not going to be like this forever. Just twiddle those thumbs waiting for it to pass on. Okay, if we're Sagittarius rising people, well, this energy happens to be falling in your, fifth house. Well, this is a very auspicious house, the fifth house, so, it mightn't be as bad, but hey, it is also the house of joy, and Mars here can mean you have no energy for the things that usually bring you joy. Your hobbies, your children, your lovers. You might be just like, a bit over it, to be honest. Bit over, yeah, okay, my boyfriend rang me up. He wants to go out to the movies tonight. I can't be bothered. I just can't be bothered. I think I'd rather stay in, read a book in bed. We just don't have the drive. We don't have the enthusiasm for life in the fifth house. Our hobbies don't hold interest for us. Our children, oh God, it's just one foot after another, just getting through this time. And that's exactly right. It is a time for just pacing yourself to get through this particular energy. Also, don't initiate anything. Don't initiate anything in the fifth house realms. No, don't start any new hobbies. Don't start writing, put off writing that new book. Wait until November 14th because this is a house of publishing. Sorry, it's literature, not publishing. House of literature. And, if you initiate some creative expression of literature, it's just you'll be tearing your hair out and you'll get to the end of November and you'll be like, oh, I've been sitting at my computer for months and I've got one page written. Oh, what a waste of time and energy. Better to wait till after the 14th of November and then jump on in and get it going. So don't try and initiate any sort of new creative self-expression. Don't try to initiate some sort of new dynamic with your children. Oh, come on, kids, you got to join the soccer team. The kids will be like, oh, no, I don't want to. And it costs too, you'll waste your money. They'll just be, why bother? So, don't try and gee the kids up to try anything new either or initiate any new activity with the kids under this energy. Also with your lovers, just take it as it comes. Don't expect that romance is going to be at a peak during this time because probably not. You won't have any energy for it. And just say, hey lover, how about we just Netflix and no chill? Let's just Netflix, this time. And, that'll have to do, just no enthusiasm for it and don't even, perhaps don't even bother initiating some new love affair. Maybe you spot someone in a cafe and, oh, they're a bit of all right. If you go and, buy them a drink or something like that, it could actually end up being more disappointing than it's worth. They could reject the drink, but you could also start a relationship with them and it turn out to be the biggest nightmare of your life because it's initiated during Mars retrograde. So don't start any sort of relationships under this energy. If you're Sagittarius rising people, don't start any new hobbies or creative projects and don't initiate anything of a new nature with your children. Okay, if you're that was Sagittarius. If you're Capricorn rising people, then we're looking at the fourth house. This is where your energy is going to be a bit lackluster. This is where you should not initiate anything new during Mars retrograde. Now, of course, fourth house is home. Mars rules real estate. Don't go putting your house on the market if you happen to be Capricorn, rising, sun or moon. Especially as Capricorn is another cardinal sign, if you've got your rising degree between 15 to 28 degrees, it's going to particularly affect you. Anything to do with home and the domestic environment and family. So, don't put your house on the market. Don't start those new renovations under this energy because it will end up being a nightmare for you. Wait until after the 4th of November to sell your house. Wait until after the 14th of November to put that extension on the house or, replace the roof. I mean, if it's leaking, do something to stop the leak. But any renovations are going to be disappointing, frustrating, tear your hair out kind of stuff under this energy. You also won't have the enthusiasm and the momentum needed for changes in this area or for doing work in this area. Maybe you've been wanting to get into the garden for months and months and months, and it gets to September 9th and you finally got the time to go do it, but you've got no drive. Oh God, I can't be bothered. And the garden ends up looking like a total jungle. So get in there before the 9th and do the work because you won't have the enthusiasm for it. This is gardening, this house. You won't have the enthusiasm for it after November the 9th to September the 9th to November the 14th. You probably won't be very enthusiastic about anything to do with your domestic environment, actually. So anything, hospitality, grandma wants to come for a visit. Oh, can't be bothered. Tell her not to, You just won't have the necessary energy to, host people in your home and be hospitable, or, maybe you were thinking of establishing an Airbnb in the bungalow out the back or something, and just don't under this energy because it's not going to work in your favor and you won't have the enthusiasm necessary to make it fly when Mars is retrograding in your 4th house. Also, relationships with mother figures as well can be impacted here, and the community, your relationship with the community. You won't have the energy for relating to the community, and neither should you initiate any new interactions with your community. Just say you want to go and join the local Country Women's Association or something like that, and you go and join this community event or community board or whatever and try and participate in the community. It's just going to end up being a nightmare and it's not worth it. So if you're Capricorn rising, just be wary of that. Now, if you happen to be Aquarius rising, this energy is falling in, boom, your 3rd house. So it's here that you're not going to have the enthusiasm that you would usually have, and it's here that you should not initiate new things. Let's start with the initiating of new things. It's not a time to initiate a new business. This is the house of the business, businesses that you conduct, money that you make through your own skills and abilities. It's not a time. Not a time for initiating that new Etsy business. It's not a time for opening that shop down the street. It will end up in disappointment. And yes, I was going to say failure. I'll say the word failure. It will be frustrating. This is also the house of a new skills. So it's not a time for going and initiating, a new course in learning how to sew or learning to do some woodwork or learning to do computer website design. Learning some new skill is going to be very frustrating under this energy. Yes, you can push through the rugby scrum to try and make it happen, but it's going to feel like, the old proverbial pulling teeth. It's going to be agony. Because firstly, the initiations is going to end up in disaster. You'll pay a heap of money to go and learn website design, and you'll come out the other side knowing nothing. And you'll be like, what a waste of money. How frustrating, for example. Or you'll lack the enthusiasm. You'll start this particular course or whatever it happens to be, skills training, and you'll be like, oh my God, this sucks. How am I going to get through the next 6 weeks of this course? Because, this is a nightmare. No enthusiasm and initiations just not working out as you need them to, as you want them to, under this energy as well. There also could be some difficulties, anger issues with siblings, relatives, co-workers. Be very, very wary of explosive sort of outbursts with those people as well. Mars in a retrograde motion and sort of the passive-aggressive behaviour with those people too. And any small group work may suffer under this energy as well. It mightn't get off the ground. You might say, okay, let's start a group discussion, group activity. Well, that's just gonna fall on its face. Nobody will turn up, or it'll be very frustrating. You'll spend a lot of money, and it can just be a very defeating time when Mars is retrograding in the third house of learning some new skill, maybe communicating a new skill as well, or not even a skill, maybe just communicating a message. Writing, speaking is very much third house energy. You might have decided you're going to write a new book, or you're going to write an article for a journal, and you just end up thwarted and frustrated. You sit down to write, you've got no energy for it, no enthusiasm for it. It's just all vanished like a puff of smoke, and you just end up more frustrated than anything. So be aware that this is a time for waiting and being patient and seeing what happens after November the 9th, when you might suddenly have much more enthusiasm to write that article or to write that speech or prepare that TED talk, whatever it is. You might suddenly get on your bandwagon after the 14th of November, and things will start to work better. Now, if you're Pisces rising, well, this is interesting for Pisces rising actually, because Pisces, sorry. If you're Pisces rising, Aries is your second house of finances. Scorpio, also ruled by Mars, is your ninth house. These are both wealth houses. And for Pisces rising people, Mars is therefore your Vedic indicator of wealth and prosperity. And here is your Vedic indicator of wealth and prosperity retrograding. Get my words out. Retrograding through your second house. So it's in the realm of finances that you can be having some difficulties. It is not a time for initiating new investments. It's not a time for establishing some sort of new monetary money generating activity. And it's also not a time for trying to work on your self-worth and self-value in the usual ways that you always have. Because you're going to end up frustrated. This is a house of our worth and our value. And right now, with the ruler of worth and value going backwards in the sky, going very introspective in the sky, it's not a time for doing active work on your self-worth and self-value. It might actually be a time for reading books, thinking about, going inward and introspective about self-worth and self-value, but you're not going to have the energy that you would usually have to go and, make that call to the stock exchange to place this money here and put that money there, and the enthusiasm that you might usually have for that sort of thing is going to be lackluster. And any new investments that you make, any new initiations to the realm of self-worth and self-value, they're actually going to fall on their face. And you might try to do some sort of work on increasing your self-worth and self-value, and you might just get so frustrated and come out feeling like, well, I'm hopeless, aren't I? Everybody else says that, Louise Hay's affirmations are fantastic, but I've gotten into them to try and help my self-worth and self-value, and no, and I feel just so bad because everybody else can get value out of this, but I can't. What's wrong with me? I suck. So your self-worth can actually suffer. That was a silly illustration, but your self-worth can suffer now with Mars, ruler of self-worth, retrograding. Your sense of value, your money, don't go spending on any big things, don't go, in fact, it would have been good if you could have put some money aside in preparation for this time, because Mars retrograding in the second house as your financial ruler does indicate the need to sort of have a bit of a backstop, because there might be some unexpected expenses that come up, and money that needs to be spent that you weren't counting on, and of course that can create a lot of hurdles and difficulties as well. I'm certainly seeing this happening. I've had a leak in my bathroom that needs fixing, and lo and behold, by the time the builder or plumber gets round here, oh boy. So there will be, it'll be the 9th of September, no doubt, and there will be some extra expenses that I hadn't counted on. Hello. I must ring him after I've done this video. Expect some extra expenses. Oh, of course, and Mars is opposing the moon in my chart. Hello. So expect some extra expenses, expect some challenging circumstances, especially if you have any planets at these degrees regarding money, the way you spend money, where money is being spent. It's also the house of food and your voice. Funny that my voice is starting to go as I'm doing this portion of the video. But You might suffer with problems to the voice. You know, your voice might not be strong enough to sort of maybe do your astrological readings or do your videos or something like that. There might be an issue. You might get a bit of laryngitis or something like that. There can be issues with food as well. Watch out for toxicity when Mars is retrograding as ruler of the second house in the second house. Do watch what you eat during this time. So that's what I'm seeing in this runaround with Mars coming up, Mars retrograde season that we are all embarking on. I hope this video helps you get a bit of insight into what you can expect, what you need to navigate, and how to hopefully remedy it with a few astrological remedies that I mentioned in the intro. Let me close with a prayer for us all during these latter days of 2020. Great Spirit, energy of love in the universe, I thank you for every one of the people who watch my videos. And it's my prayer that the words spoken here uplift and support and help and heal and guide people who need it. May the wisdom of the stars lead the way for us to be able to navigate the rest of 2020 and indeed the future and whatever comes. Help us to navigate 2020 Mars retrograde period with integrity and to channel more of the energy of the Roman god Mars, which is looking for ways to create peace with intelligent democratic strategies rather than just being volatile and letting our emotions and our frustrations run away with us. Guide us, lead us, and help the outcome of 2020 to be for the greater good for one and all. And so it is. Well, thanks for joining me for another Astro Weather Report. Check things out next week where I'll have another one coming at you, and I'll see you then.